particularly for me and personally for me, it is a great pleasure to introduce Richard Dreyfuss.
All right, thanks. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you and good night. What's up? I'll tell you what, you can ask me anything you want. Don't ask me about Joe's.
What about Bob?
Uh-oh.
That'll be good.
Really quick, I want to let you guys know, Richard has a policy. If you ask him a question he has heard so many times, he's tired of it, you owe him $10. I know this for a fact because I did this a couple years ago with him in Kansas City, and a friend of mine wanted me to ask him, when you eat mashed potatoes, do you build Devil's Tower? And he looked at me and he said, you owe me $10. After the
only
show,
two people who beat me so far are two 10-year-old twins. I don't know how they knew what they knew, but I didn't know it. So I paid them off.
Well, after the show, he came up and he said, where's my $10? And he took it. So I am going to ask the first question, a question I hope you've never heard before, for $20. Your agent was Meyer, Michigan, a lovely man. I talked to him many times. There's a scene in Jaws during the montage where you're talking on the phone and you say, Michigan, there's no need for me to come to Brisbane because I have a great white right here. Was that a homage to Meyer, Michigan?
Yes, it was. And his son was the driver of the Mars rover.
Wow.
The first one, which lasted for about a minute. He's trained all his life, and then he got onto the Mars rover and it hit a rock, and that's all it did.
Everybody is raise their hands. Right, sir.
Now, I read an article that you didn't do Jaws 2 because Steven Spielberg wasn't involved in it, but then just right after that you did Close Encounters of the Third Kind. What was your working relationship with Steven Spielberg?
Terrible. Just terrible. I wouldn't do the sequel because it had been done and I knew that they wouldn't spend the money on the script or the director or anybody or the actors. And so I said no, it was easy. But Close Encounters was the noblest idea for a film I'd ever heard of. And I actually badmouthed every other actor in Hollywood to get that part. Just to walk by his office and say, Pacino has no sense of humor. Or De Niro's crazy. This is true. And then I got the part on the day that I said, Steven, you need a child. And he looked up and said, you got the part. Which I think is a compliment, but I'm not really sure. He said afterwards that had he been married with children, he would never have done that ending. And I say, with all due respect, bullshit. There is no other ending for Close Encounters, although I have figured out what the trailer is for the sequel. You want to hear it?
Yes.
I'm sitting at a desk and I say to the camera, I'm the guy that played in the first film where the guy went up and I'm back. And I can cure cancer, and I can bestow immortality and give you inner harmony and inner peace. But I'm not going to do any of those things until I get a really tough entertainment lawyer, because I know that the film companies are going to try to fuck me. That's the whole trail.
So, Richard, I met you earlier today. Lefties were in our right minds.
What?
Lefties were in our right minds.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
In the scene where you're on Quinn's boat and you look directly into the camera, was that like an ad-lib? You look directly into the camera.
Why am I? What do I say at that moment?
You don't. You just roll your eyes.
Was that an ad lib? Everything was an ad lib on Jaws. It was. We just made it up as we went along.
Normally actors don't look directly into the camera. So that was like totally different.
Well, I can only tell you that actors do all kinds of things that you never see usually, and someone at that studio decided to keep that one in. And I can't tell you anything more. Okay?
How did you feel when you were picked for Matt Hooper? And did you feel happy that you got the role?
Yes, I did feel happy that I was in a position to be offered great roles, but I actually turned it down. I turned down that part twice. And when Stephen asked to meet me, and he said, "Don't read the book." And I'm a really good actor who does what his director tells him, and I have yet to read the book even now. So we had lunch and he told me the story, and I was on the edge of my seat. He said, "So what do you think?" I said, "It's gonna be a fantastic movie. Want to do it?" "No." "Why not?" "Because it's going to be a lot more fun to watch than it is to shoot." And I said, "No, because I am the president and founding member of the idiots of the world." And so I turned it down. And then he asked me again a couple of weeks later, and I turned it down. And then I saw the film that I had done right before I did Jaws. And it's a film called The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz. And it's a Canadian film, and I had no way of judging, no evaluation technique that I had built in myself yet to watch me for more than 20 minutes at a time. I'd only done TV. And here I am, the lead of a 2-hour movie. And I went insane. And when they asked me what did I think, I said, "Well, I think it's a great movie, and I think you should cut me out of the film." And I know exactly how to do that. And they said, "You're crazy," and threw me out. But I did feel I was inadequate, to say the least. And I knew if anyone buys this film and sees it in America, I'll never work again. So I called Stephen and begged him for the part. And I mean begged him. And then some years later, we were somewhere, and I told him that I had just been what is called deal broke out of another film. And deal breaking means that if they've had a verbal agreement for you to do the movie that's an agreement. They owe you whatever they said they were going to pay you. And apparently, in this other project, they had to get me to quit, or else they'd have to pay. And I walked into my agent's office and I heard him on the phone with some executive. And he said, "Are you telling me that if Richard doesn't do this, you won't hire any of my other clients?" And I got so angry so fast that the hat that I was wearing went flying through his window, and I picked up the phone and did exactly what they wanted. I quit. And I told that to Stephen. And he said, "Gee, that's what we had to do in order to get you into Jaws." So I learned. I learned to be ashamed of myself. And that really, that sobered me up. Go ahead.
So while part of me feels like you just answered my question,
Go right in.
I want to know personally what kind of moments you had on set where you felt maybe this was just going to be the worst movie in the world, with the worst director that you've ever worked with all of the mechanical issues that you faced. What sort of moments on Jaws kind of made you question what you were doing on the project?
Nothing. I did think and did go on television and say that I didn't think the film would be successful, because I said, with my vast experience in the film business of about 7 minutes, that I thought that it would be defeated by its need for special effects, etc., and it wouldn't work. And then I saw the film, and I crawled back to that TV show and told them that I was president of that organization. And I said that I was wrong. The thing that pissed me off was that they said that they made me go back on that show, which they hadn't. And that really rankled. So don't say that. But I did learn, like life experience, and having a career in the motion picture business does give you certain advantages like knowledge and wisdom. And I didn't have any of that. I just opened my gap and spoke stupid things. And so I learned, keep your mouth shut until you know what you're talking about. There was an exhibitor from Boston. When he received the news of the rates Universal was going to charge the theater owners, he sent back a telegram that said, "Hell will freeze before I pay those rates." And then he saw the film the next night, and he said, "Hell froze in my theater last night." Yeah, watching that film for the very first time, unbelievable. To realize that that's you up there. You're not there, you're there. And you don't know what's gonna happen next. And you're in the movie. You've shot the ending. I didn't know what was gonna happen. I was so frightened I couldn't begin to tell you. I decided to go and sit up in the balcony where the regular people were, as opposed to the exhibitors and the people from the business. I go up, I'm the only white face in the entire balcony. And I sit down next to Clarence Williams III. You know who that is? Mod Squad. Regular people. And then 20 minutes later, I had forgotten that I had shot it. I was terrified. I'd eaten all my nails, Clarence's nails. Wow. And actually, I can say that it's a brilliant movie, not only because, and mostly because of Stephen. Because 20 minutes after we started shooting, or a few days after we started shooting, we realized we had no shark, that the shark didn't work. And there are enough radio mics on Martha's Vineyard that you could follow the progress of the movie just by listening to the radio mics. And they would say, "The shark is not working. The shark is not working." It wasn't working. It would come up and it would go, fall over. And then one day you heard, "The shark is working. The shark is working. The boat is sinking. The boat." And I was on that boat. And it was sinking in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It had ripped the bottom out, the anchor had ripped, and it was steadily. And Robert Shaw decided that if he was going to die on the Orca, he was going to be very neat. And so I remember seeing Robert buttoning up his to the stern, to the bow of the boat, and he stood there waiting to die. And Stephen on the workboat had been sending all these safety boats over to our boat to try to save us from dying. And we could hear, "Get the actors off the boat, please. Get the actors off the boat, please." So I'm trying to help a 75-year-old sound man who's in charge of a $50,000 Nagra tape recorder to get his legs over the side of the boat. And that's how they lined up. And I said, "Get the actors off the boat, please." And I yelled, "Stephen, he's 75 years old. Fuck him. Get the actors off." True story.
Did you ever ride the Jaws ride?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Once. I wrote the real George.
Richard, we read you had a contentious relationship with Robert Shaw on set, and that there was a bet about doing 20 push-ups. Did you attempt to do them? And if yes, how many push-ups did you do?
We had no contentious relationship. That's a lie. And it's a lie that appeared somehow about 25 or 30 years after the film was shot. And all of a sudden there was this other rumor. But we did not have that. But he did have my number. You know when someone has your number? And if he's got your number and he says you can't do 25 push-ups, you can't. Even if you can, you can't. And so Robert had my number, and I couldn't do whatever the amount was. And I couldn't say, he would say, "You can't jump from the top of the Orca into the water." I could do it. I'd spend my life doing shit like that. And not that day. Couldn't do it. And so Robert and Mike Chapman, who was the operator on the film, had both decided that they were going to teach me how to drink. Because I was drinking Mandy stuff like whatever. What are you drinking? Namby-pamby. I'm going to teach you how to drink. And they did. And basically, you know how to drink when your head is clear, you're fine, and you attempt to get up and your legs stay there at the table. That's when you graduate. And Jaws was a long shoot, and so I learned. I had a PhD. I passed all kinds of academic tests, and Robert was a past master at this. He was the Yoda of drinking. So he was trying to negotiate the way down the ladder from Mallorca, and he had a glass of bourbon in his hands, and he said, "Help me out, will you, Richard?" I said, "You really want me to help you out, Robert?" He said, "Yeah." I took his glass and threw it into the ocean. And every drinker on that set, 150 guys, went, "Ooh." I thought, oops. And even Mike Chapman, who was right there, went, ooh. So Robert looked at me. Are you aware of Robert Shaw's reputation as an actor? Anyone here, like, stupid about it?
Yeah.
Because Robert Shaw could intimidate Jesus of Nazareth. If he looked at you in a certain way, all you wanted to do was cut your eyes out. And that's what he could do. And so he looked at me that way. And then the next scene was my character at the stern of the boat, trying to get the cleats between the boat and those floating things disconnected. And there's water and water, lots of water. And Robert took the hose, the fire hose, stood behind the camera and pointed the fire hose at my face. That was the only day that I lost my famous sense of humor. And that was that. There was no feud, nothing. It was that one day. And Robert was a great writer and actor. He had done a performance in Man for All Seasons, playing Henry VIII, which you can all see as the greatest Claudius ever by anybody. And he had also written 2 plays, one of which was called The Man in a Glass Booth. And it was about the Eichmann trial. When Eichmann was caught, the Israelis put him in a glass booth so that no one could shoot him from the room. And this play is about that. And he read the entire play to me in the hold of the boat. And when he started to read, this man, this extraordinarily strong, beautiful, brilliant voice, just went into a state of paralytic shock. I couldn't move. And then he read the whole play. When he got to the end, he has a speech, and he says, "Children of Israel, children of Israel, if he had chosen you, you also would have followed where he led." And I was like, and then I looked up, and the entire crew, including Stephen, was at the window of the hold of the boat. No work had been done for 2.5 hours. They just listened to Robert's voice. And I learned a lot. When Richard Zanuck found out that Robert was competitive, no work was done, because Zanuck is also competitive. And when they found out that they both thought they were great at ping pong, Richard Zanuck would not let Robert go to the set until he had beaten him in ping pong. And unfortunately, he never beat him. So the entire day, which cost about $400,000, was given over to the most expensive ping pong game in history.
Hi, Richard. So when I was...
Where are you?
Oh, I'm right here. Hello. Right here.
Okay.
So when I was at the table getting an autograph and I was trying to choose from all your wonderful pictures, I was looking at the one of you in the dive cage, and you briefly mentioned about that was the day you ran out of air. So as a diver myself, it's like I'd like to hear more of that story and what your experience was with the cage and your underwater diving experience with that movie, and what exactly happened about the air.
I was experienced as a scuba diver, but I had never passed the test. I just didn't bother. But I'd been scuba diving for 20 years. And that scene is me already in the cage. And I look at him and I say, I ain't got no spit. I was so terrified. And when I said that, I ain't got no spit, the winch that was holding the cage broke, and the cage fell into the water, and the opening, the door of the cage was the top, and it fell on top of me and locked. And I was maybe that far under, but under is under, and I couldn't get out. And it had ripped off my mask and my oxygen. So I was 2 inches below the surface for maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds tops, which was counted as equivalent to 6 years by the Einstein Institute. And fortunately, the entire crew were all licensed divers, and they all saved me, got me out. And you have no idea how terrified that can be. And then I used to go scuba diving in Hawaii every Christmas. And one day, the people in Hawaii that we met brought a friend. And we went into the water, And we went 90 feet down to look at this schooner that was buried under the water. And this guy, the stranger, tapped me on the shoulder and went, and I said, so, being president of the Idiot Foundation, I took off my mask 90 feet down. And that's, I think, on the wall of the Idiot Foundation. That's the first one. And I took off my mask and panicked and went up as fast as I could, only thinking, am I supposed to beat my bubbles or not beat my bubbles? Do I beat them or not beat them? Which one will kill me? I don't know. Okay, go. Boom. And I broke water and I was alive. And I said to this guy, why did you do that? And he said, I just wanted to see if you could. So we buried him down there. What an idiot. He's the vice president. What else?
So whenever you were shooting the Ben Gardner scene where his head pops out, that scene still spooks me to this day. Were there any scenes either involving Ben Gardner's head or perhaps the shark that spooked you while filming them?
Where are you?
Right here, right here.
Okay. Well, one thing happened. First of all, that scene is the only scene that was shot in a tank because they needed clear water. And so that was held until the film was finished on Martha's Vineyard. And we had been on the vineyard for 6 months shooting. The original schedule of Jaws was May 2nd until June 28th. And we left the island on the 16th of September, unfinished. And we went to the Universal backlot to this tank. And they were setting up for that shot. And the head of the stuntmen's group came over to me, and on the day that we had sunk the boat, he had leapt out of the bottom of the boat to the wheel, and he was trying to get the boat onto the beach of Chappaquiddick Island. And he kept screaming at the top of his lungs, "This is the worst! This is the worst! Northwest Passage was not as bad as this. This is the worst!" Okay, thank you. And so some weeks or months later, we're in the tank. He comes up to me and he says, "If you want to ask for oxygen, don't come up and ask for oxygen. You just go, and I come to you. And you get what you need." And then he started to swim away, and he turned around and he said, "And it's my own mixture." Now, I have no real experience with these people, stuntmen. What does that mean to me? It means that they're the craziest sons of bitches who ever lived. And this is my own mixture meant that you did not feel loaded at all, but that you were willing and eager to work. That was the high. And that just meant slightly more of the laughing gas and slightly less than the opposite. It was so great that I said to Steven Spielberg, who would never take a drug if a gun was not pointed at his head, I said, Steven, you have to take this. You have to just inhale it once, that's all it is. All these people are loaded on this stuff. You gotta try it. He wouldn't. He's an idiot. He's a member of the same organization. So, I kept coming up and saying, what? And they would give me a shot, and they would tell me what they wanted to adjust. And apparently, I kept floating down below the level of the screen. And I said, what are you talking about? I'm kicking, I'm doing everything. Well, apparently, I wasn't really kicking. My brain was saying I was kicking. My legs were like sticks. And that's when I realized the potency of this stuff. And I had to use it on Poseidon, too. First day, I said, you got the special stunt? Fun.
All right, last question.
Question?
Charles is my favorite movie, but I adored you in Always. Just wanted to say that. But my question is, it was one of the first movies I saw in a theater, and it has profoundly affected me every time I go in the water. Do you have the same problem? I mean, I have to cut the lights on in the pool at night, or I won't go in. It's that bad.
Me too. Steven Spielberg and I will not walk in from the beach into the water. We will jump off a boat, but we will not walk in from the beach. And we stand there and we call ourselves Saul and Murray. Because we're obviously two old Jews who can't. And we stand there like this. Nothing funnier. Nothing.
All right, everybody. I just want to say something real quick. 45 years ago, I wrote this man a fan letter, and I got a reply back, and my life has never been the same. Please give it up for Richard Dreyfuss.
I'm going to tell you, I have to tell you, I promised Steven Spielberg that I would never not tell this story. There is one story I will always tell about Steven, and it's an oath, so I have to tell it. One night, when all of us were at Steven's house, summer of '74, Nixon and the tapes and the stuff, the phone rang, and Steven's assistant went to the phone, and he said, hello? Oh, hi. No, he's here. Wow. Wow, okay, that's great. Hold on. Steven! And Steven comes to the phone and he says, hello? Oh, hi. No, I certainly will. Right away. Thank you. Puts the phone down, looks at all of us in the room and says, that was Robert Redford. He wants me to direct All the President's Men. What's it about? Does anyone not get the humor of that answer? 1974. All the President's Men. What's it about? I said to Steven immediately, I will never, ever not tell this story. That's how focused Steven Spielberg was. And probably still is. He's probably very wealthy.
So, round of applause.
So thank you very much.
We got one more thing. We got a surprise. You can thank Richard's lovely manager Karen for this. If you'll all stand up and look under the bottom of your seats, or if there's an empty seat next to you, with black tape, if there is